So the big question is this: how can dyslexics like us create a place, a community, a tribe where people at any stage of life can come and solve any challenge, amplify their strengths, and ultimately help them become who they were meant to be, or in other words, conquer their dyslexia? That is the question, and this show is the answer. My name's Theo Goff, and welcome to the Conquering Dyslexia podcast.
What's happening, guys? Today I want to talk about how you can create unstoppable habits for your dyslexia and as a dyslexic to help you along your life. And I want to talk to you about this. I'm so excited. I mean, think about this for a while about how can someone, and I've been doing a lot of research on it. Like, how can someone create certain, how can someone with dyslexia who's notoriously, not organised and not structured and can't do things in a certain order and it always seems to be everything everywhere all the time. How can someone like that be able to be structured and be organised and create habits to live, a more manageable life? Because I remember, with myself, I always have a habit of losing stuff. Always, I lose everything. I remember at school, I had everything saved on a memory stick, and I lost this memory stick once, lost everything, and then I spent months and months really hard work getting everything back again, of working on it. I lost that memory stick, I lost that, and I think I lost one more in that 2 years of being at my sixth form, and it was chaos and hurted loads. And I lost my wallet more times than I can imagine. Lost my credit card more times than I can imagine. Thank God I haven't lost my phone. And how can we, how could I even stick to a habit when I would lose things so much, and when things would just disappear, and I couldn't. And I always say now I always think it's a magic trick. I think it's a magic trick. There's this little sheet of paper, not a sheet of paper. It's a really important thing I would go through about this reading method that I do, and I lost it when I needed it most. I was like, where is it? I don't know where it is, and all these things. And how do someone like that create a habit? And even though they, can't keep the same thing in the same place all the time. And the way I want to answer that, and because recently I just finished the audiobook, Atomic Habits. I think it's Atomic Habits. Something like that. But it's a very, very good audiobook. And years ago I listened to the book, not about a year ago, I listened to the book, Habit Foundation or whatever, and I've been learning a lot about it. And I know that I understand the power of a habit. So what a habit is defined as a unconscious action. An action that you repeated so many times that the neural pathways in your brain can repeat it unconsciously. That it doesn't take thought and effort to things like brushing your teeth, having a shower, your morning routine. All these things are most likely unconscious habits. You don't think about brushing your teeth, you don't think about the motion your wrist has to go, how you do things all the time, but yet you do them. You do these unconscious, you do these things, and it becomes a routine. It becomes a habit. And I've learned a lot recently about how to create effective habits, no matter your circumstances, no matter if you find it hard to stick to a routine, no matter if you find you have low discipline and all this stuff. And what I learned is kind of contrary to what I used to believe and how I used to act and that sort of stuff. Because I used to believe, it's all willpower, you just have discipline and you work really hard and you do this and you do these crazy stuff and it has to work and you do whatever it takes. I used to just believe just kill myself to do it, and if it's not working, it's my fault. That's how I used to feel. I know that's how a lot of us feel sometimes when we're trying to do things all the time. And as we're trying to do them, we work really hard, and when we don't do them, we beat ourselves up. We're trying to stick to a diet and we eat ice cream. We're trying to get better at this work and doing this project, and we fail. We get lazy. We do the wrong thing. And what I really learned is, I remember I was practicing this in my life without actually, basically understanding through a book why it happens. But basically, with myself, with doing all this work with conquering dyslexia and setting up all these things and doing all the stuff I want to do, I remember, for me, the best thing I can do is, because if I'm not working, I can go to Costa. If I go to Costa, I can sit down on my laptop and I'd be there all day. I could work there, and I just plough through the work. I used to love it. But if I had to stay at home and do the work, I couldn't do it. well, maybe 1 or 2 days I could do it, but it's incredibly hard for me to do the work at home because I feel I have to stay disciplined to do it. But I was just like, well, I have to do the work at home and in quarantine here because all the courses were closed. I was like, what? All the courses are closed? And I remember just feeling like, this is awful, this is dreadful, I don't know how I can cope, I don't know how to live on all these things, but I've got to stay at home to do them. And that's not how I work, that's not how I roll. So I remember actually thinking about this a lot and having a good week or so being unproductive, and I hated that. And I remember really working towards a routine that worked for me. I would get up at 5. I'd do my morning walk. I would from 5:30. I would end 5:30 to 6. I would do a new workout that basically I created. It was half an hour workout. I got some weights at home and I sort of like managed to do it, and I worked out and I loved it. As a half an hour workout, then I would like a cold shower. After the cold shower, I'd work on my English. Improve my English. I would do spell correcting on my words. I'd do a whole page with that, 10 words. I'd film a little thing on TikTok. Then I'd read for an hour. And then about 8, half 8, I would get into my work. And I knew once I'd done that morning routine, everything would feel smooth for me. Everything would go for me. And yes, for example, it wouldn't always be 100% smooth. I wouldn't get everything all the time. I wouldn't work as hard as I would want to. But I knew I would feel so much more confident in myself. I knew I could do loads of stuff. Contrary, I can't say the word, but before that, if I didn't do that morning ritual, if I got up and went back to bed, guess what? I wouldn't have done any of those things. I wouldn't have done any of those things. I wouldn't have got up. I wouldn't have done those things. I wouldn't be productive, and I wouldn't be what I like to be. And what I understood, because I thought, okay, this is the thing that I have to do. And I remember spending years, literally years, trying to get my morning routine, and plan it and not execute it, and all this stuff. But what I learned about creating a habit is it's not the big, massive things you have to do that will change your life. It's the very, very, very small things you do. And once you understand a little habit, you can grow on that. A little habit that you do that positively empowers you. Because, here's another way to think of habits. Habits are, for example, we have positive habits, we have negative habits, and we have neutral habits. And, for example, our habit is, when we feel stressed, we have a habit to smoke some more. So when we feel stressed, we have a habit to drink. When we feel stressed, we have a habit to eat, or whatever. And basically, with a habit, I like to think of it, there's 3 core parts. There's actually 4 in the book I listen to, but I like to think of them as 3. It's more simple in my head. First one is the hook. That's why I say the hook. It could be a pattern interrupt, the anchor, the thing that sets you off, the spark, the hook that gets you to do the action. So you have the hook. For example, it's working out, putting on your trainers. For example, with me, it's working on my English. It's opening the book, or I'm listening to certain music on my phone. We have a certain hook to set us off on the habit, and that with doing that hook, that often can actually make us have motivation to do it, because technically there's 4 elements, but I like to think of them as 3. So the first one is the hook. The second one, it gives you the motivation, the drive, and the need to do it. Because first off, the hook, someone says something, you hear that smell, you put on those shoes, and then you have some sort of drive, some sort of motivation to do it. And then the actual habit is done, and then there's a reward. But I like to think of them as 3 basic things. Hook, habit, reward. Hook, habit, reward. Hook, habit, reward. And the hook has to be a pattern interrupt. And it has to be all the time. And think of it like I'm not thinking of it like, the hook is something that happens all the time. It's consistent, and you do it. For example, I love listening to music, calming music, nothing exciting, to help me focus, to help me work. That's my habit. Another hook. When I go into Costa, is actually going to Costa. That's a hook. But to be honest, at the start of the day, it's driving to Costa. That's the actual hook. Driving to Costa. Because it's the first action that counts. It's the first little move. It's not going for one. It's not actually stepping outside. It's putting on your shoes. It's that first action doing it. And for example, when you want to do something that, I really don't want to work out today, I really don't want to do that thing, don't focus on the actual thing of doing it. Just focus on the very, very first minute action. Just do that. Just do the first minute action. That will help you. And when this really helps us in, for example, we have dyslexia, for example, our brain works differently, we focus on so many things at once. Sometimes we have loads of unfinished projects we're doing. We have loads of things that we want to do, but they're unfinished. We want to complete, but they don't get done. And if you have a habit of reviewing, we have a habit of setting our priorities, we have a habit of organisation ourselves. And once we create a habit for that, we'll be able to be so much more productive. We'll be so much more happy. We'll feel so much more less stress if we do those things. But in order to do it, we first have to have a pattern interrupt or an anchor, a hook that gets us into action. It's the very first thing you have. Then the action is required, and after you do the habit, you have a reward. You have to give yourself a reward. You have to. Give yourself like a little reward. It could be something you think about, thinking, oh, this feels really good to me. Or it could be something like you think about, or something in real life. You give yourself a treat. And the reward can't be against your habit that you're trying to create. You can't try and get fit and then eat a cheesecake after you've been to the gym once, because conflict. We have to have positive ones. Like, for example, we just worked out, we can do something, post to social media. We've just done that, we can feel really good. We can tell our friend, we can see ourselves getting towards it. And I really want to make this video and hope, like, for example, to give us some bit of knowledge about, because habits are really important, really, really important. And for people to be successful, they have to have successful habits. Successful, like that. For example, with dyslexics, there's a saying that that people said that dyslexics either end up in Yale or they end up in jail, because 35% of all entrepreneurs are dyslexic, 40% of all self-made millionaires are dyslexic, but yet 70% of all juvenile delinquents are dyslexic, kids committing crime. Massive positive, massive negative. And you could argue it's the habits that got them there. Because think about it like this. That it's their habits, way of thinking, that made them go down the wrong track to being that. And yes, it could do. It's a massively controlling their environment. Yes, it's massively to do with that. How they're growing up. But I'm saying it's the habitual way of thinking. Because let me be honest with you, your emotions, your thoughts, the questions you ask yourself are habits, are habitual. They're habitual. Think about loads of, when you notice people around yourself, they always have a habitual way of thinking. You know who's going to be happy. You know who's going to normally sad. You know who moans. You know who's you know these people. It's the habit way of thinking. It's the habit way of acting. And guess what? You have that too. I know you. I know you're this unique person who feels the right emotion in every single situation. But just imagine if you're not perfect, if you have a habitual way of thinking. Sometimes that sometimes you're not the most rational person, but you're more inclined to act on your habits or how you've always acted. And maybe sometimes you're not always 100% present on how you're feeling and what's going on in situations. That sometimes your emotions take over. Sometimes you're just on autopilot, feeling the same things you always feel. You're not really questioning, you're not really thinking about it. But guys, that's a pattern. That's a pattern, and that's a habit way of thinking. And habits control our whole life. And I want us to really realize the power of this. Because there's physical habits to create to make you fitter, to make you better. There's spiritually, there's ones you can make you more happy by thinking a certain thing, by doing certain actions. And listen, habits are so important, like a building block. But also think of it like this. Discipline is not how you create a habit. Discipline is not how you create a habit. The biggest misconception that people have is that it's our discipline that matters. It's not. The reason why you're not creating the habit that you want to create isn't because of the discipline that you have. The reason why you're not creating the habit that you want to create is because of the friction you have. Because, like, for example, a lot of our negative habits are still there because there's very little friction happening for us to have those. For example, social media. It's extremely easy for me to click on TikTok and scroll through it. Extremely easy. Even though I know it's a bad habit, I do it because there's very little friction. It gives me a fast reward. Oh, it's entertaining. It does the bits. But if you want to create a positive habit, have very, very little friction, very, very little steps for me to complete that habit. And for example, me sitting in Costa, there's very little friction for me to do my work and not do my work. Because I'm there. It's a lot of effort for me to, okay, I'm not going to do this, a lot of effort for me to get up, pack my stuff, and get in my car, drive home, get home, and then I'm there to do the things chill and relax. But if I'm home, there's little friction for me to do a negative habit. Does that make sense? You have to create negative habits, have a lot of friction, and positive habits have as little friction as possible. And the best way to do this is environment. Get yourself in a certain environment that means it's productive for you to follow through. A certain environment, for example, don't pay for a gym that's 20 minutes away, out of your commute. That's really hard effort for you to go through. No, get a gym that, for example, on the way to work, you'll go there, you go work out, and then you go to work on the way back, or it's very, very close, or at lunch, or something like that, and create a habit, and make sure it's very easy. A routine. Very easy routine. For example, I had a little thing with me with doing my words and my reading. I had a conflict. For example, I was doing them fine when I wasn't working, but now I'm working and there's a lot of traffic. And so I know I leave my house, I try to leave before 7 a.m. and because I can get to work around 7:30, and then I basically go into work at 8:30, but I can do my reading and I can do my words. I'm sitting in my car, that's my time to do it. But before that, I had a lot of friction. I didn't know a lot of stuff. And also, again, I've got this negative habit when I'm watching, basically, I getting my food ready and going upstairs and watching some videos on my computer about certain stuff I'm learning. And I like watching it, but I've developed a habit. I notice now, I can feel it in my body. When I put down my food, I want to pick up my phone and scroll on social media because that's entertaining for me. Just look at rubbish. It doesn't matter. That's entertaining for me. And yesterday, I wrote down I wasn't going to do it. I planned I wasn't going to do it, but I still did it. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make the friction more harder for me to do a negative habit. I'm going to leave my phone in my bedroom. And basically, I've got bedroom and the place where my brother used to live before he moved out. It's a little bit bigger room. That's my office now. So I leave my phone in my bedroom or downstairs or whatever. And I'm going to my brother's room. I call it my office, and I'm going to watch the video there. That's how I'm going to work. Because then, for me to get my phone and scroll on social media, I have to get up out of my chair and go to another room and pick it up. There's more friction there. Do you understand? And so it's an environment that matters so much. So start building up an environment is so important. And guys, this is important, don't you? You know the habits are important. And if you want to create one, do some research. There's books on Atomic Habits, incredibly important. And here's a little thing. Atomic Habits is named that because atomic is very small particle. Like atomic is very, very small. The point of it is a very small habits make the biggest difference, done over a long period of time. Because if you had a 1% increase each day for a year, I think you'll be 30 times more better. Because think about it, 1%, for example, if I gave you, for example, if someone had £10,000, £100,000, and I gave them an additional £50,000, so I gave them 50% more, £50,000, so I'd be, okay, I've got £150,000. I gave them an extra 50% more, that would be £75,000, £25,000 more. Because they had a lot. Because if you improve 1% each day, you'll be so much more successful. And that's focusing on little things you can improve. Because if you take a little shift from where you are now, a little micro half a degree shift, and you just keep on going up a year from now, you mean like a day from now, a week from now, a year from now, a month from now, it would carry on in going in a completely different direction. And a couple of years from now, you'll be in a completely different destination than you would be if you didn't do the habit. Because it's not about the change that would happen now. It's a change consistently over time. And I want you to understand this power. And it's especially important as a dyslexic with the challenges we have. In order to conquer our dyslexia, sometimes we have to take advantage of the automatic habits we have inside of ourselves. And really use what we have to learn. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this And yeah, please like, share, do all that stuff. Take care, farewell, and bye.